Howdy YouTube family. It's Bolt CRNA coming to you again with another day's topic. Today we're going to talk about how you prepare for interviews in CRNA school. I know this was a huge anxiety and fear of mine getting ready for CRNA school applications and the interview process. And I remember the fear driving to the interview the day of and just the pit in your stomach, just so nervous that this could be your future, this could be your future career, this could be your one shot, and maybe you're gonna mess it up, and maybe you're gonna say the wrong thing or something dumb and you're gonna ruin your chances. So you're hoping to get some tips from someone who's gone through the interview twice. I've done 2 interviews, and I've helped with my programs. When I was a student in my program, I helped with the interviews as well. So I kind of have multiple angles of view on this, on how to interview and what kind of goes behind the interview, behind the scenes a little bit with the program directors. So I'm going to share that wisdom for free with you guys today. Let's get into it. All right, first step, I know you're nervous. I feel your anxiety through the camera. Take a deep breath. Be calm and understand if they picked you for an interview, on paper, they already think you could be a good student in their program. They already think that you could have what it takes to be in their program. You've impressed them already. So be confident in that. Understand you've impressed them. There's many students who applied that did not get a chance to interview, and you beat out all those students already. So be confident in that. Be calm. Let your nerves settle down a little bit. Next thing you have to do is understand that on paper, most students are going to look very similar to each other. A lot of students are going to have very similar stats, very similar certifications, similar GPAs, similar leadership abilities, similar letters of recommendation, all of these things on paper that make us really impressive, we think, that make us stand out. Guess what? Everyone else, the hundreds of other people who have applied, probably all had the same thing. If you got an interview, you probably all definitely had those impressive qualities. So now it's time for the interview. Say they're interviewing 300 people and they've got a slot for 30 of you. And that's a very realistic number for how many people they may interview and how many people most programs take. So say all that's happening, 300 people they're interviewing, all of them have very similar stats to you. So you're not trying to impress them on paper anymore for the interview. They already know what you look like on paper, and you look like 300 other people who could potentially be applicants. So now what you're trying to do is look good off paper. Now you need to show them off paper, not the stats, not your GPA, not how you were impressive, on your unit with this initiative or whatever. Now you need to show them in person that you are somebody personally who deserves to be in their program, who has what it takes to become a CRNA, and you know why you want to be a CRNA, and you know what you're willing to sacrifice and do to become a CRNA. They're going to ask you questions, sometimes clinical, sometimes ethical, sometimes just about you as a person and what makes you tick. They want to see if you're going to spend, the next 3 years, 80 hours a week connected to them. They want to see who you are, what makes you tick, and what makes them want you to be part of their program, because they're going to have to deal with you a lot. And I'll tell you, as you go through the program and then go all the way up to graduation and you become more like friends with your program director and your professors, and then you graduate and they welcome you as colleagues and stuff, and you have dinners with them and things like that, you become a little closer to them, you realize they're people just like you're a person, and they don't want someone in their program who's annoying. They don't want someone in their program that they're going to have to talk to and deal with all the time who's arrogant or self-important or not a team player or unethical or seems like they're there for money. They're interested in just a step up in the career ladder for finances and financial gain, or looking for the next business venture, or whatever. They want that Lamborghini one day or something like that. If you come across like that at all during the interview, they do not want you. They are very likely to not pick you. So that's what the interview is doing. The interview is saying, hey, on paper, you've met the same requirements that these other 300 people that we're interviewing over months of time have all met, and now we're taking the time out to talk to you face to face and figure out what makes you tick and if you deserve these 30 valuable slots over the other 300 people we're interviewing. So what can you do to prepare for this, to kind of get your fears and anxieties down some? Practice interviewing. Get a camera. Even your iPhone has a camera on it. Talk to it. Talk like I'm talking to this camera now. Start talking to a camera about yourself, about why you want to be a CRNA, clinical situations that you've been in. Just start practicing like you're in an interview already. See what your body movements are like, what your body language is telling them. If you're super anxious and nervous and you're closed off like this and you're shaking and you seem like you don't want to be there and not very pleasant, that doesn't come across well on an interview. You don't want them to have a wrong impression of you. You want to come across like you're confident but not arrogant. You want to make sure that your speech and language is not coming across like you're talking a mile a minute and like you're anxious and uncomfortable and all these things that you probably are very much going to be in that moment, but you need to practice interviewing and talking so that it's kind of lessened some. They are going to understand you're going to be nervous, and they're going to understand that you're not going to be the best version of yourself that you possibly could be in that moment, but you don't want to come across like you're so much uncomfortable that they can't even gauge what kind of person you are or your personality or anything about you in the interview because you're so anxious and you're talking so fast and you're running your words together and you're not making sense and you're saying things that are not appropriate to say in the moment because you're anxious. You don't want to do that because that, to them, they don't have an idea of who you are at that point, and they have no real reason to give you the slot over someone else who maybe has gotten down the interviewing better and came across like a really good applicant. Something that I mentioned earlier that I'm just going to reiterate here is be confident but not arrogant. That is something that I have seen. It's very common in CRNA school applicants, and it's very common in your ICU nurses who feel like they're cream of the crop and they're best of the best, and they have their CCRN and they, are in leadership committees on the unit, and you kind of get a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, and it's really easy for ICU nurses like that to get a little bit arrogant. And I'm just telling you, it comes across in the interview. When I helped out with the interviews, what we did is they would have two students who would sit in kind of like the waiting room area while the students would kind of get teed up and show up and sit in the waiting room area. And there's like a round table with some coffee and water and just different assortments, and they would sit and wait in there while another student was being interviewed. And while they would be waiting, me and another SRNA would be talking to the student, and we would just try and calm them down and answer questions about about Jackson, Tennessee, where we lived, where our program was, and just kind of answer more like personable questions about what it's like as a student in the program, and kind of just give them an idea of what they would be looking forward to if they got into the program. Well, the other thing that we're doing is we're figuring out what kind of person this student is. Hopefully they're pretty calm and they're more casual around us, and they're also more open to talk about really why they're there, or their personal, ethics or morals or struggles or whatever, their story kind of. They're a little more comfortable talking about that with me than they would be the program director and the other board members who are going to be sitting around a round table in a minute and talking to them, and they're going to be very nervous around them. Around me, hopefully they're more, calm and relaxed, and people were. And to this day, I still keep in contact with some of the people who interviewed and who I talked to that interview day, and who connected with me, and hopefully I helped calm them down. But I say all that to say, there were students who came through who definitely came across arrogant, who definitely came across like they thought they had this in the bag. They were some hot stuff. They had everyone else beat. They had done triple, helicopter flight nursing for 12 years, and they've tubed 18 people in the field already, and they had to do a crike one time in the military battlefields, and just like all this stuff, which is great. That is great experience. But when you throw it out like that and you push it down someone's throat, and you come off like you're arrogant and you're bragging about yourself and you're trying to put off this macho, like I know everything already and I'm really amazing kind of thing, that's really a huge turnoff for CRNA programs, because honestly, when you start the CRNA program, you realize no matter how great and amazing you were before, you are an idiot and you know nothing, and you're going to be broken down and remolded over 3 years of terrible pain, no matter how great you were before. And I had people in my class who were flight nurses and ICU nurses for 10 years and, 2 people in the fields. There were people in my class who had that, and they struggled. They struggled at the beginning because it is such a huge adjustment to realizing, oh my gosh, I know nothing. Like what I thought I knew, this is like a mountain of information on top of what I thought I knew, and everything I thought I knew goes way, way, way deeper than what I realized, and I have to know so much more than that now, and it's overwhelming. And so you don't want to come across like that student on the interview day. Another thing that I saw students doing that's not good is oversharing. You don't want to come in and overshare. You don't want to start coming in and saying like about what happened to you as a 3-year-old and this traumatic experience that caused you to want to always be the best nurse that you could be, and then that caused you to want to be a CRNA and stuff. There is a little bit of the element of human interest and stuff that you want to share, but don't overshare. Don't get into crying fits, which sadly I have seen. You don't want to seem unstable. You don't want to seem like someone who's coming in for an interview and you can't even hold it together long enough to professionally interview in a situation. You don't want the program directors to pity you. They're not looking for a pity applicant. They're not looking for someone that they're just so afraid is going to cry if they don't accept that they're going to take you in, because they're probably going to be looking at it like this student is not emotionally stable enough to handle the stressors of CRNA school. So you don't want to come in very just unwound and kind of emotional. And something that one of my program professors had said that really makes a lot of sense is know why you want to be a CRNA. He asks every student when they're sitting there in that chair being interviewed, why? What is your why? What is your reasoning for all of this? Why did you do all of this work and apply and are willing to put forward 3 years of lots of pain and suffering and hardship of trying to go through CRNA school? Why are you willing to do all this? Because if you don't have a very strong reason why that will outlast all of the pain and the sacrifice, you probably won't make it. You probably will drop out, probably sooner rather than later into the program, because the program will require so much out of you. If you're not willing, if you don't have a strong reason why that you can write down and say, this is exactly why, and this is why I'm willing to do everything it takes to make it, then why would they take you as an applicant? Because they're looking at you as probably someone who's just going to drop out, which means they wasted their spot on you, which means there could have been another one of the 300 students they interviewed that could have become a great CRNA that they denied and did not give that slot to because they gave it to you and you squandered it because you didn't have a strong reason of why you wanted to be a CRNA and you drop out. So have a really good, strong, real reason why, be able to talk about it fully, and it cannot be money or you just want more autonomy in your career or something basic or superficial like that, because the sacrifices you're having to make to become a CRNA, they're going to be much, much greater than what a superficial reason is worth sacrificing for. Be able to talk about clinical situations you've been in that are difficult, whether they be codes that you had to run, whether it be a situation where the medical team was going a certain direction for the patient, but you didn't feel like it was appropriate, and you advocated for the patient, and you put yourself kind of out there a little bit on the line, but it was the right thing to do, and you put yourself out there, and you stood against what maybe the physician wanted to do, and you turned out to do something good for the patient. You know, you want to be able to say that you're ethically and morally someone who is willing to do whatever you've got to do to make sure that patient gets the best optimum care and has the best outcomes, whether it's a little bit more work or whether it's, a longer time for the medical team to deal with something and they don't want to deal with it, whatever it may be. You put that out there and you advocated for that patient, because that is very important as an anesthesia provider, because every day you're going to work and sometimes you have to be the main advocate for that patient to make sure that the anesthetic goes the safest way and that everything happens the best way that it can for that patient. So they want to see that you already have that foundational ability as an ICU nurse, and that you're willing to build on that and grow into an anesthesia provider. And lastly, make sure you dress well. I know this doesn't seem that important, and a lot of you would say, oh, well, of course I would. I'm just telling you, dress to the nines. If you feel like it's a little bit too much, just do the too much. Be overdressed if you need to. One time I did one interview where, and this actually wasn't a program that I went to, but I got the feedback from them later that I had taken my suit jacket off. I was wearing a shirt and tie and slacks and a suit jacket, but I took my suit jacket off because I was getting hot. Well, turns out they thought that wasn't very professional. They thought that not wearing a suit jacket and just having this shirt and tie was not dressy enough, and they looked at all the other applicants who were wearing a suit jacket and said, hey, they cared more about their dress attire, and that was enough that made them feel like I wasn't as prepared or as serious as some of the other applicants. So I say that to say, like, don't come in a tuxedo, but definitely be in a dress clothes, like nice dress clothes. Don't do business casual. Don't do like, oh, you know, this is just a little bit dressed up. Be very dressed up. Be extremely professional, and be, you know, presenting the best aspect of yourself that you possibly can to impress them. Well, all right, guys, that is all of my tips for interviewing for CRNA school. I hope it was helpful to you guys. I get this questions a lot about how do I prepare for CRNA school interviews. So now I have given you a whole video about it. And if you guys have tips for the ways that you prepared for CRNA school, or things that I said that I did that you don't agree with or whatever, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And that's Bolt out.